Senator Jim Banks from Indiana joins us, naval officer. Senator, you've been right now, we've been doing live coverage in Korea. It looks like it could be a 4 or 5 point loss there to a party that's controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. You've been at the tip of the spear on the anti-CCP movement and efforts in the United States Senate. Would you give our audience an assessment? We had Pete Hegseth in Singapore the other day saying, hey, if things don't change, this rehearsal is going to lead to, I believe, a potential imminent attack in Taiwan. And tonight we may lose South Korea in political warfare to the existential threat to the United States. Sir.
Yeah, Steve, we have to do so much more. I mean, I spent 8 years in the House. We created the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. There was a full court press in the House. And I've tried to bring that same energy to the Senate. President Trump has been the only president in my lifetime who's been tough on China, who's identified China as our biggest threat. The tariffs are all about holding China accountable and reorienting the global economy it puts America's economy first rather than China's economy. And I think those tariffs are working. There's a lot of good news out there. President Trump has put China on notice that if you break the deal, we're going to hold you accountable for it. And 2 days ago, more evidence that China hasn't kept up their end of the most recent 90-day tariff deal that we have with China. So we got to keep up the pressure. We got to be tough on them. We're seeing the outcome of what happens when other countries play footsie with the Chinese Communist Party, and how the Chinese take advantage of those countries and they meddle in their elections, and you see the outcome of that. America can't. We don't have any, Steve. You know, we don't have any time left. We have no time left, and we have the only president that we've ever had that is willing to be tough on them. We have to maximize these next 3.5 years to do everything that we can to hold them accountable, rock them back, use the tariffs as our number one vehicle to punish China and reorient to our economy and the global economy in our best interest. And we're running out of time to do that.
And when you were such a strong advocate in the House and now in the Senate, but here's, I think people get confused. You've got Lindsey Graham. It seems like a big part of the Senate. I mean, they're implying they got a veto-proof, something they can pass in the Senate and in the House regarding Ukraine and Russia. I mean, here we're, and you're a student of history, and it's a bold, audacious, brilliant, kudos to them on the tactical side, but we had a country that we're the sponsor of make an attack on a nuclear powers part of their strategic triad, take out 40% of their strategic bombers. And it looks like people in the Senate are cheering that on. At the same time, you hear, except for yourself and a handful of others, saying, hey, hang on for a second. The people running this deal are out of Beijing, and they're about to take over South Korea. We're warning people about Taiwan because, as a naval officer, these are no longer exercises. These are rehearsals. Do you think the Senate has actually the understanding of the existential threat the Chinese Communist Party has to the United people of first off, the people in China, allowed Beijing, but also the people in East Asia, our great allies of Japan, South Korea, in the Philippines, and also Taiwan, sir?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, we can't afford to be drawn into this war. President Trump campaigned and was elected with a mandate, Steve, to bring the war in Ukraine to a close, to bring it to an end. And why would we want to tie his hands in doing that? I think that's what the bipartisan legislation in the Senate, I think what Senator Graham is talking about, that further ties President Trump's hands. I can't support that. I want President Trump to use all of the resources that he has available to him to bring the war to an end, stop the loss of lives and the cost, and don't draw America into it any further. That's what the American people voted for. Get us out of it. Don't spend more of our tax dollars and our resources on what's going on over there so that we can focus on America, focus on the economic picture here, the tariffs, focus on the China threat, That's what President Trump was elected to do. We shouldn't tie his hands from that would stop him from doing that. And I'm going to oppose any effort that would block President Trump or tie his hands any further.
The reason you went from the House, naval officer, to the House and then to the Senate so quickly is that you're pretty dialed into your constituents. And you talk about Indiana, you got Hoosier basketball, Notre Dame football, the Indianapolis 500. I mean, this is kind of Americana. What do the folks in Indiana say about this? What do the geopolitics? What do they say about the geopolitics of where they think the country's headed, sir?
Yeah, I go home every weekend, and I talk to family and friends every week. I went to the Indianapolis 500 last weekend, Steve, and what a great event for my state. The Indiana Pacers are in the NBA Finals, and I mean, Hoosiers are common sense people. I mean, they're wise farmers, small business owners. They want me, their brand new United States Senator, to be more focused on what's going on in Indiana than what's going on in Ukraine. And they know that China is a threat. Every farmer in my state knows that China is a threat to their way of life. Every factory worker, as you know, my dad is a retired union factory worker, made axles all of his life in a working life in a factory. And he understands the China threat more than most of these United States senators do, because he knows that the China threat is a direct threat to the livelihood of the men and women who show up at work every day trying to make ends meet and put food on the table. And that's what Hoosiers want me to be focused on. It's why they back President Trump so substantially when it comes to pushing these tariffs. And we're in Indiana, we're seeing the good news of it. I mean, big announcements that GM, Honda is going to make their next generation Civic in Indiana, not in Mexico or Japan. Eli Lilly bringing $27 billion of pharmaceutical manufacturing out of China to Indiana and in the U.S. Roche Diagnostics, a $50 billion announcement, the same thing, taking it out of China, moving it back to the United States. I could go on and on, Steve, but Hoosiers are seeing the real benefit, the real effect of what President Trump is accomplishing through these tariffs, how it's diminishing China, how it's helping America. And they want their senator, me, the new senator from Indiana, to be focused much more on that than getting us entangled in conflicts and wars around the world.
When you have these judges, the tariffs, he makes this compelling case for the tariffs and about the national security threat, about fentanyl, the chemical warfare, the cartels, all of it. And these courts just toss it out. And when they toss it out, they just toss out the whole national security aspect. They throw it out like it's laughable, and then they want to undo it. What do the folks in Indiana say about that? Looks like the judicial supremacy over President Trump and thinking through kind of the commercial relationships, but particularly the national security aspect of dealing with China.
Yeah, they're livid about it. I mean, that's not what they voted for. They voted for President Trump to shake it up, to go after China. They knew President Trump would enact these tariffs. He talked about it on the campaign trail. That's why Indiana overwhelmingly voted for him. And Indiana's a red state, but we haven't always been a red state, but we're a pro-Trump red state. And the voters in my state, just like around the country, voted for President Trump to do exactly what he's doing, and to be blocked by the courts. It infuriates anyone that I talk to. And I'm concerned, Steve, about where does that go? What does that lead to if elections don't matter and the courts can block President Trump from doing what he promised he would do, that he was elected to do? And me as a senator, I'm elected to back him up on it, and the courts are blocking it. Hoosiers are outraged by it. I know a lot of Americans are. I'm concerned about where that leads us as a country.
We got a couple of minutes. Make us smart. You've got the big, beautiful bill. This, people are saying it's too much spending. The bond market's reacting. You guys have to deal with that now. It's supposedly to vote by July 4th to get it out. You've got all this geopolitical where as a naval officer, we're getting sucked into this Third World War. The next couple of weeks in Washington, make us smart. How do you see this thing rolling out?
Well, you got to look at the what's in the bill, what it does. And go back to 8 years ago. By the way, 8 years ago, when Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell negotiated the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they made the corporate tax rates permanent, but they sunset the individual rates and the small business rates. Steve, that's why we are where we are today, because the old GOP had a bigger emphasis on corporate rates. The new Republican Party has to right that wrong and make those tax cuts on working class families, those individual rates, and the tax cuts on the pass-throughs, the small businesses that make America's economy the great economy that it is, that keeps this economy working. We have to make those tax cuts permanent and prevent the biggest tax increase on factory workers, police officers, teachers, small business owners. We have to prevent that biggest tax increase from happening by passing the big, beautiful bill. Now, the Senate has an opportunity to make improvements. I think the work requirements on Medicaid is one area that I think that's good policy. It's good politics. 5 million Americans who sit at home every day who could work but don't work. They don't have a sick kid or a sick mom at home that they're taking care of. But 5 million Americans who could work, who don't work, that the Medicaid work requirements will push them back into the workplace, and then take 1 million illegals off of Medicaid who are on that. That will save $700 billion over the next 10 years with those work requirements alone. So those are good aspects of the bill. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime pay. That part of it's really important too. And then funding the mass deportation effort, funding
Senator,
border security.
Can we hold you through a short commercial break? Just be a minute or